I good now? Should I start over? Okay, sorry. We'll do a do-over. Good evening. I am Michelle Bucks. On behalf of the school board, I welcome you. To those here in the auditorium and those viewing on Zoom or YouTube, we are glad that you are joining us tonight. One small note of business as we all work together to keep COVID numbers down so we can continue bringing students to school physically, we do ask that you please keep a face mask covering your nose and mouth at all times when in the building. We appreciate your cooperation. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to give everyone a recap or summary of where we are in this process of discussing elementary building plans, and to begin to seek public input on the design process. In case you have not been able to join us over the past several months at board meetings, we want to make sure that you know where you can find information on this process and also how you can be a part of these ongoing discussions. This will be the first of several public building meetings, in addition to school board meetings, where information will be presented on the proposed building project. And this will be the first of several opportunities where we will be seeking public input and opinions as we walk through this process together. Some of you might be wondering why we are discussing building plans when we are in uncertain times in the middle of a pandemic. It's been certainly quite a busy time, especially in education. But actually, this discussion and this process started back in January. Nearly a year ago, we were a new school board team. We had a new superintendent. And like most school boards, we met for an annual board workshop. At this board workshop, our goal was to discuss long-term vision and planning. In these discussions, we were trying to set goals for some achievements and larger kind of big picture things that we wanted to accomplish in the short term as well as in the long term. Some of the areas of conversation involved budget, safety, transportation, and special student services. In these conversations, we realized that the status of our buildings and the future of our buildings really impacts our ability to plan in all of these areas. The building space impacts our budget. The building spaces impact how we educate students. Therefore, it became quite clear to us that we needed to evaluate the status of our buildings and the future of our building spaces. Therefore, at our February 11th board meeting, we approved an agreement with Fidavia for master planning consulting. Fidavia came highly recommended from several local school districts. They noted that this consultation saved them both time as well as money in building and renovation processes. Throughout February, we interviewed several architect firms who proposed interest in carrying out a facility feasibility study. On March 10th at our board meeting, we approved Crabtree, Rohrbach & Associates as the architect firm to perform our facility feasibility study. This tasked them with exploring options for existing buildings and to consider possible building options for our school. Crabtree, Rohrbach & Associates continued in that study over several months at several different board meetings. April 7th, July 14th, and September 1st, we received updates and reports on their findings in that process. What Crabtree, Rohrbach & Associates showed us is that improvements to our current buildings are indeed necessary. The facility study also revealed to us that the cost of renovating our 4 existing elementary buildings is comparable to the cost of building 1 consolidated new elementary school building. In addition to that, this study revealed that our district would have significant yearly savings due to a consolidated elementary school model. And In addition to all of those things, there would be many learning benefits that a consolidated elementary school model would encompass. And Director Marlowe will talk about those later this evening. From the results of the facility study, the board came to the conclusion that a K through 6 consolidated elementary model would be the best path forward for our school district. At our September 8th board meeting, the school board unanimously voted to authorize Crabtree, Rohrbach, and Associates to proceed in the next step in this process. That next step is schematic design of a K through 6 elementary school. They will continue to give us regular updates at school board meetings. At the October 6th meeting, they again presented what the schematic design process would look like and how we can incorporate public input in that process. At those presentations where Crabtree presented to the school board in April, July, September, and October, all of those slides are available to the public on our district website. If you have not been able to participate in these previous meetings, we hope that the information provided tonight will give you a thorough understanding of why we are moving through with this process and how we are moving forward in this process. We believe that the information provided by Crabtree, Rohrbach, and Associates has shown that now is a critical time to move forward with this project. And this project will yield both short and long-term savings and benefits for taxpayers, students, and our community. Again, we thank you for joining us in conversation tonight. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our superintendent, Dr. Messinger.
I'm disappointed the board didn't clap when I walked up here. Welcome, good evening. I'm just going to go through the agenda and talk a little bit about the school district background. We're going to start tonight. I'll be talking about that background, and then I'm going to introduce a speaker from Crabtree, who will then, go ahead and advance that slide there, Kirk. Who will then talk us through the district-wide facility study and show some examples of what they found and discuss that. In addition, they will talk about a proposed project schedule. And then finally, they have an interactive session planned that people will be able to do from home or from here, either on their phone or on the computer. Just to give a little bit of background, Director Bucks did a very good job of recapping the conversations that started last really January. But in reality, in 1996, and I think at that point my father would have been a part of this, the land adjacent to the high school, middle school was purchased. At that point in time, there were several discussions about the value of that land to the district and that it would be something that they could use down the road for a future project. And I don't think at that time they knew exactly what that project would be, but several ideas have been tossed around from 1996 on. In 2017-18, there was a decision made by the school board at the time to conduct a facility study using a company that completed the study. They evaluated all the facilities. They made recommendations for comprehensive additions, renovations, and they also talked about a new elementary school. Unfortunately, leadership in the district was in transition at the time. As you know, we have a new superintendent, and we have a lot of new school board members, and that study was never acted upon. In January of this year, as Director Bucks mentioned, we made a decision to get updated information and then to take a close look at that information and explore the use of the adjacent land. As Director Bucks mentioned, we've talked about that for almost every board meeting since we enlisted Crabtree since March and have been getting updates for them on a regular basis. They've just completed the feasibility study and are now in the schematic design phase that recently began. They're going to go through that in a little more detail. So I'm going to introduce our representative from Crabtree. It's Mr. John Badia, and I believe they are unfortunately in need to join us virtually tonight, but he is with us virtually and will be talking us through the next few slides.
Thank you, Dr. Messinger. So if we advance next, thank you. So my name is John Badia. I'm with Crabtree Rohrabah and Associates. I'm an architect and have been working with the administrative team over the last few months, as previously indicated. And what I want to do now is walk everyone through some of the various tasks that we've been involved with. The first thing that we embarked upon was an enrollment and program analysis. And we're very fortunate to have Dr. Fred Witham, a retired superintendent, joined CRA previously and has been working with us to specifically develop demographic and enrollment analyses to help guide the planning for many projects. So this is kind of a summary of a fairly extensive enrollment analysis that was conducted and can be found in some of the previous presentations, but I'll hit a few of the highlights here. In the elementary scenario, student enrollment continues to be flat or slight decline. We looked back as far as 10 years of actual enrollment, and we also looked forward and projected 5 to 10 years in the future. So we started with that enrollment analysis and soon came to learn what the challenges are, which are very typical in a district of this size, and particularly when you have multiple elementaries at this size. Things like varying class size, if you have a bubble in a certain demographic area, depending upon the size of the school and its attendance boundary, that can be a difficult challenge for an equal distribution of kids per classrooms. What types of support programs are necessary at that particular school, as well as just scheduling efficiencies. It just becomes a challenge for staff to schedule program and equity among all the students within the district. One thing that also happens is it causes the staffing to actually be less efficient, because the size of the buildings or the spaces that are available can limit or restrict you. And then of course, when you introduce the idea of what's your educational program for the future, that can present an even bigger staffing and scheduling issue. Generally speaking, as numbers of seats decrease or the enrollment stays flat or continues to decrease, the fixed operating cost per student will obviously go up. And that's something that we recognized early in our analysis. At the secondary level, for both the middle school and high school, we recognized almost out of the gate, while we knew the board's focus was the elementary issue, we've recognized programmatically that the middle school and high school is currently operating today slightly above capacity. Now, when I say today, not in light of the pandemic, but prior to that, there's simply not enough space in the middle school and the high school for the numbers of kids and the types of programs that you have. That's a result of some things that we discovered through our surveying. There's a large number of undersized classrooms or adjacency issues and so forth, how the middle school and high school is split up. One of the things we recognized early, because the middle school and high school is essentially out of space, we explored the idea of relocating the district administration to free up space at the middle school and high school. Next, please. So kind of an overview of the district-wide facility study that's been mentioned a few times. It began with both a demographic and enrollment analysis. They established the planning numbers as we move forward in making recommendations. We then turned to try to develop an understanding of the current use of space. in each building and how it relates to the capacities. So when we start talking about a future educational program, the first thing we need to do is understand what are the restrictions currently placed on the district because of small classes, a small classroom, not enough space, or in the case of the middle school and high school, is the space in the right location of the building to provide the level of separation that most districts seek in a shared middle school and high school scenario. We did also conduct an independent evaluation aside of the 2017 and 18 study with our design team that looked at the physical structure. We talked about program, the building systems, more engineering as part of the design team to walk through and analyze the condition of all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and technology systems, fire protection, and provide their insight. And the third partner is Steckbeck Engineering, a local civil engineering team that provided some guidance on site design, what the adjacent parcel of land could be developed as, what considerations have to be given, and then an assessment of all the athletic facilities. And again, we've been reporting fairly routinely monthly to the board, and this information has been gathered through bi-weekly team meetings with the district's administrative team over the past few months. Next, please. So here in fact is the example of our capacity analysis, and this is a snapshot of all the district buildings. This is our starting point, and we want to understand what the current designation of each of these spaces are, how they're being used. We look at their square footage. We look at the numbers of students and enrollment, issues like separation, and we developed this capacity. It's the Department of Education model for determining the size of the building and how it is utilized. That starts to identify some constraints and restrictions. We could see where certain spaces have just landed over the years through various additions or renovations. They might not really be in the right spot, or they may not have been placed in a location that was originally intended for that use. So it's common for a school district over many, many years to repurpose space as your program changes, but then over the years you might find yourself not where you want to be, or simply don't have adequate space. Examples of this are things like science labs, family consumer science, art and tech ed, and so forth. So as we went through this exercise, we had a better understanding of our starting point for capacity. And then this last point, we talked about the district's long-range educational program. How will this building change if the board undertakes a project to get you the next 20 or 25 years that will work with your program and serve your students in the community? Next, please. So the next several slides are, again, a high-level summary of the existing conditions and analysis of each of the buildings. And what you'll start to see is a fairly repetitive message in terms of the deficiencies. And I'll touch on those in a minute. So starting with East Hanover Elementary, the building area at 31,000 square feet and 8.7 acres. So right out of the gate that we recognize, again, by certain Department of Ed standards, the minimum acreage for an elementary school would be 10 acres as a starting point. So we start thinking about what is the size of the available parcel of land, and does it have any capability to be expanded? So at 8.7 acres, it's slightly undersized. Then to the left, you'll see dates of construction, starting with original. So this is kind of an important benchmark in terms of when the building was originally constructed, but then it had received either additions and or renovations in 72, 76, 94, and 95. So 95 was really the last kind of comprehensive renovation. By the Department of Education standards, 20 years for renovation is the expectation. When you go beyond that, you start populating this list of deficiencies, if you will. So one of the unique issues at East Hanover that would be a challenge for any future expansion is the on-site sewer and the well. By most standards today, the quality of water and serviceability of sanitary is an important utility to serve a building. Traffic in almost every case, by today's planning standards, we would look to physically separate the bus drop off from the parent, from the service. In many of these instances, there were conflicts or simply not enough space to accomplish that. In terms of the building envelope, when I mention that, what I'm really referring to is the exterior of the building. So exterior walls, windows, curtain wall, canopies, and roofing. All of those items are what we would describe as the envelope, and over a 25 or 30-year period, things like windows and curtain wall for daylighting, which are very important, would not have the technology and energy efficiency of installing those new systems today. This building, much like I believe every building, does not have an automatic fire protection system or sprinkler system. There are a number of ADA or code compliance issues that would naturally have to occur from 1995. The state mandated International Building Code has been updated numerous times. So when you undertake a renovation, one of the key objectives and requirements is that the building be brought up to meet all current construction standards and code compliance. So there's a list of what those items are. That is fairly repetitive as we go forth. The last point here that I'll make, all major building systems are beyond their service life. And what I'm referring to there are the mechanical systems for ventilation, for either heating and cooling, electrical for demand for emergency generator, lighting and technology, and then plumbing for fixtures in not only restrooms and classrooms, but their quantity and capacity relative to the capacity of the plumbing fixtures that are required. What we consistently found in all the elementary schools, each of those systems, the mechanical, the electrical, and plumbing, are well beyond their useful service life. Engineers will describe that as about a roughly 20-year period that despite phenomenal maintenance to the buildings, once you get beyond 20 years, it actually can become an issue, just as something as simple as not being able to find a replacement part to service a unit ventilator or a piece of rooftop equipment. So when you pull all those items together, the estimated total project cost range for East Hanover is about 6.5 to 7.4 million. Thank you. So here again, same statistics. Fredericksburg, a little over 40,000 square feet. Acreage is even smaller here at 6.7. And again, these items are all fairly consistent with original construction of 63. And in addition, back in 03, there are still conflicts with parking, service drives, parent and separated bus drop off. Again, the building envelope, a lack of a fire protection system, the code compliance. Even since 2003, there have been, I believe, 4 or 5 iterations of the IBC that need to be addressed. And again, all major building systems in Fredericksburg have been determined to be beyond their service life, their useful service life, and need to be replaced. The cost range for Fredericksburg is between 9.5 and 10.6 million. Moving on to Jonestown, largest area of the elementaries at a little over 58,000 square feet. And the square footage of the buildings are going up, and you see the acreage is going down to 5.3. And again, original construction of 1953 has all the same components of deficiencies that by today's planning standards, we would redesign traffic, address the building envelope, a fire protection system, and then all the code compliance in conjunction with all the major building systems. This project would represent the highest of the elementary schools, in part by the size of the building that it is at 11.7 to 13.2 million. So last of the elementaries, Lickdale at 34,000 square feet, almost 9 acres. And again, you will see nearly an identical date of construction of 1957 original, with renovations in 95 and addressing those 5 or 6 key points along the right. Total an estimated cost of approximately 6.7 to 7.6 million. Then moving on to the middle school and high school, obviously the largest of facilities, combined total square footage of 212,571 acres. Again, when we see dates of construction like this, original construction of 57, and you can see from that picture of the front, some of that curtain wall and window structure is original to the building. So in several cases where we note dates of additions and renovations, they were also not comprehensive renovations. They were very specific to what they have renovated. So that's very important and substantiates addressing, again, the same deficiencies with traffic's a real issue in the middle school and high school. Even as you enter the site, circulation patterns, conflict with service deliveries, the dumpster locations, where the kitchen is located in relationship to the bus drop. Again, the entire building envelope, fire protection is absent from this project as well. Code compliance issues would be required in a renovation. And then again, all major building systems that are reflected in the cost range of the largest project at 39 to 44 million. And I'll just add one quick note that in a facility study, these ranges are given to provide an order of magnitude to the board for decision making. We've not selected final mechanical systems. So whatever direction these other projects proceed in, that's why there's a range to allow some maneuverability for you as a school district to make selections that are important to you and your project that impact costs. I think at this point, I'm turning it back over to board member.
Okay, that's better. Good evening. My name is Mike Marlowe, and I'm going to cover some of the benefits that we as a board saw from as we looked at this consolidated elementary school. Before I jump into that, I want to step back a second and just talk about what a board, as a board, what we're called to do, and that's primarily 3 things: planning, setting policy, and evaluating results. And as Dr. Buck said in the very beginning of the year, as this new board came on, we started doing that process. And one of those things from a planning standpoint that we looked at were the schools. And that's because we're tasked with looking at safety, security, educational outcomes, and the overall cost to the school district. So we started to do that process. And then one of the goals of the board is to allocate resources to achieve the educational goals that we have. We have to allocate those goals so that we see student success. And we really felt like, as we started to go through this process, looked at what we have today, that we had to do something different to get different results. And thus we landed on this. And I'll go through some of the benefits that are listed up there. Many of them have been gone over already, but I will touch on them again. As we did this as well, from a planning standpoint, the board's looking at certainly the budgeting side of things, and we look at it on 2 levels. One is more short-term, and Leanne will tell you her budgeting process never ends. As soon as it's completed for 1 year, it's starting the next. But then the other role of the board is really looking at long-term planning, long-term financials, and that falls into this. So as we looked at this, these possibilities, the one thing that Dr. Bucks pointed out, and John may have pointed out as well, or you could surmise from the slides he just went through, where the cost to renovate the 4 schools that we have is very similar to the cost we're going to see in building a new school. So if we decide to keep the 4 we have, we would potentially see those same costs. As John said, the systems in those buildings are at the end of their life. They would at a minimum need replaced. So as we started to look at all of that data, it just made more and more sense that we move forward. But all that being said, take the financial side out of it. Some of the additional benefits that you'll see up here on the screen or on the slide is that today, having 4 schools, it's really difficult to provide an equitable education programs to students. We don't have the same schools, the same size classrooms. We don't have the same resources in each school. So trying to do the same thing, run the same programs in 4 unique schools makes it very difficult. We don't get to share resources. So we feel like consolidating that together will allow us to improve on that. We improve learning environments. As John from Crabtree went through, all of these schools were built in the 50s, maybe one of them early 60s. They've had renovations, but the core is still there, and education has changed over time. So we really needed to start to improve some of those learning environments. Appropriate space for current and future programs. The current schools that we have, they're kind of fixed, they're in a box, very difficult to expand in many of those cases. As John said, our land, even at most of them, is below what is recommended by the state. The campus concept as a whole, sharing facilities, sharing resources, we see that there's going to be some great benefits from that. One of the biggest ones will be some staffing, and we shared at a board meeting, either the last board meeting or the one before, what we saw as some of those savings. Those savings come out to about $1.8 million a year. We wouldn't see that day one, but we would see that eventually come. 1.8 million annually is a pretty big number. It actually covers the bond amount for the elementary school. So from a cost standpoint, this move is cost neutral from that standpoint. It doesn't mean other expenses aren't going up at the same time, but that by itself helps to justify on the cost side if there are no other learning benefits there. Lower operating cost in general. We are, the square footage that you would see in the new school is, I believe, actually a little bit more than the square footage we have today, but that is to facilitate better learning spaces, more collaboration, and to allow for some additional growth. The other challenge, which I probably skipped at some point up there, is, having 4 schools and trying to balance those classrooms. Over the years that I've been here in Northern Lebanon, I've seen us busing kids across, from one community to another to try to balance those out. And it creates a lot of challenges both for educating our kids and for parents. So bringing all that together just makes a lot of sense. And again, from a long-term planning standpoint, it's one of the things we're charged with as a board, and we believe it's the right move. I'll turn it back over to John now. You still there, John?
Sure am. Thank you. Okay, so if we advance to the last slide before we start our interactive portion, this is a schedule, again, simplified schedule, if you will, that shows the board's comprehensive approach to address all the needs within the district. Our primary focus is the elementary, the new K-6 that will have the relocated district administration function, again, as I mentioned earlier, to pull space out of the middle school and free up space there so that an addition is not required there. But generally speaking, based on the size of the elementary school and grade configuration, it'll be about a 9 or 10 month design and regulatory review and approval process, which is shown in green. Then there's a brief bid period for public bidding, and then the construction duration of possibly 22 or 24 months. So, that was something that the board also evaluated from the time a decision to start the design process until occupancy is a 3-year decision. So moving forward, we also wanted to keep sight of, the athletic facilities and or field house to serve the stadium. One of the things when you update those facilities that becomes a code requirement also is just simply providing the number of restrooms that are required based on the seating capacity of the bleachers. So Steckbeck and our firm talked with the district in depth about all the athletic facilities and are looking at designing and providing improvements in conjunction with the elementary school. Not quite sure how that might bid at this point. Right now, we're showing them overlapping because we think there's a cost advantage for the district. That was also supported by Fidavia, the construction manager, to do as well. And then the third project shown is for the junior senior high school, which would now become a 7 through 8 facility. Still take roughly 9 or 10 months for design and regulatory review approval process, take it through the land development planning and conservation district approval. And then depending upon what that final scope looks like, because of it being fully occupied and the size of the building, we could expect to see somewhere between 24 to 26 months of construction. So that's the overview of what has been provided to date. I think we're going to move into the interactive portion. So we have a little bit of direction for those of you that are joining us in person or at home and or online. What we'd like to do is have this interactive portion by going to www.menti.com. Whether you use your cell phone or your computer or your iPad, and the district has provided the guest access for the Wi-Fi and its password. And when you arrive at the site, which will look like this, you'll be prompted to enter a code. It is specific to this meeting tonight for those of you that are online or in person on your cell phones. So this application works virtually in any technical setting, if you will. So while everyone is going through that again, the code is 6818080, and we will now start the Mentimeter presentation that will begin with a few questions. In a normal environment, I think we'd all prefer to be together having this discussion one-on-one, but this interactive portion of the presentation will be live streaming results that as we go through these questions, we will be able to show the results for everyone who is participating. So the first two are just generally demographic. Do you have a student in the district? Are you a community member, staff, and so forth? And on the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the number of people that are providing information. And this helps the board see a cross-section of who is participating tonight in this portion of the presentation. Okay, we'll give it just a few more seconds if people are still logging in. Okay, that looks like wrap that up. So that shows us a cross section of who is participating this evening. We want to go to the next question. This is trying to get a little bit more in depth. As a parent, what grade level is your child in? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. I think we saw roughly 20 participants on the first question, so let's at least wait till we get in and around that number to make sure everyone has time to participate. Okay, looks like we've reached that number. If we want to advance to the next one. So this is trying to, that will allow you to enter multiple answers. And what do you see are the biggest benefits of a new elementary school? And you may select one or multiple. All right, it looks like just about everyone has participated there. So here again, kind of multiple choice, if you will. What do you see as the biggest challenge of the new elementary school being? Okay, there's rounding out around 19 participants. So this might need a little explanation. What we're looking at is exploring the idea of how the grade levels could come together and share spaces, but also should be separate. So what we're looking for is you in support of the new school being organized by grade levels, perhaps a primary K2 academic wing and a separate 3rd through 6th wing. Okay, that's pretty clear. All right, thank you. So what we're exploring here is your thoughts towards the relevance of improvements for school district facilities for the arts and athletics in the elementary building. What level of importance? All right, that one's fairly relevant. So here we're looking for input on what do you believe to be the most important feature of a new school? Okay, looks like just about everyone's participated there. So again, not only talking about the elementary school, but what is your thoughts on exploring renovations to athletic facilities at the middle school, high school campus? Okay, fairly good cross section there. And then the last two are, I guess, to try to solicit input on how you as a community feel about sharing information moving forward. Okay, that's certainly helpful. Thank you. And last question, are you interested in participating in any additional questions regarding the design of the new elementary school? Okay, So one of the advantages of this format, thank you for everyone participating in that session. The results can also be shared through an FAQ to be found at the district's website, which I guess leads us to the last one or two slides that I'm turning back to board member.
Yes, good evening. I'm Barry Naum. I have the pleasure of discussing next steps and where we are going from here and how you can participate, and then to close tonight's meeting. So what are the next steps and how can you participate? The first step that we have is an ongoing process that we invite you to be a part of, and that is our monthly board meetings. At each of these monthly board meetings, as has been going on since the beginning of the year, we will have an opportunity to receive updates and progress reports from Crabtree Rohrbach on how the development is continuing. Those presentations will be available to the public, and we invite you to participate in that process through the public input section of each of those meetings. Now, unfortunately, due to the present circumstances, each of our school board meetings are being held virtually. But one silver lining to the cloud of the pandemic is that the public is able to provide input from the comfort of your home, and we invite you to do that. Just make sure that you go to the Northern Lebanon District website to see the process for what it takes to submit public comment at those school board meetings. And we'll show you the district webpage here in a minute. The second opportunity that we have is a more discrete opportunity, and that's an opportunity that, much like tonight, on Wednesday, November 18th, Crabtree Rohrbach will be giving us another presentation, and that presentation will be focused on the schematic design of the potential new elementary school. And hopefully that will be based upon input from the public, like you've done tonight virtually. And we would desire to see that begin to the degree that we can with the kids in the elementary schools and their teachers as they provide input on what they would like to see the building actually look like. How are we going to facilitate all of the things that we're dreaming? And we would invite, hopefully, the opportunity for you to engage in that process virtually as well, so that you can help us and the district, the administration, and the board dream about what these spaces could look like. Again, that's scheduled for November 18th. That's a Wednesday. And at that meeting, we will also be giving a presentation and discussing the funding and the budget implications of the project that is being envisioned at this point. And then lastly, the last opportunity is also one that is ongoing, and that's an opportunity for you to be informed and to engage us as a district on all of the things that we've talked about for the last 10 months or so, and as we receive more presentations and information from Crabtree Rohrbach. Up on the screen is our district's website. If you go to norleb.org and go to the community tab and then drop down to building updates, you will see all of the presentations that the board has received over the course of this year from Crabtree Rohrbach. We will post all of the future presentations that we receive in the course of this process on this page as well. We invite you to go to this page as often as you need to and get as much information as you can. Information, as we always say, is power, and this is where a lot of that information can be found for you. And lastly, I shouldn't have said last before, we do desire to hear from you, and we want to hear your comments, we want to hear your questions. We greatly desire to hear your constructive thoughts as to what the district should be looking at going forward. Our contact information as school directors is available on the website. We ask that you reach out to us so that we can hear your thoughts. We are excited about the coming weeks and the coming months and what it means, not only for this district, but primarily for your students and primarily what it means for our community as well. We're excited about this opportunity. We think that the future is very, very promising for the Northern Lebanon School District and for our community. We're grateful for your time tonight. We're especially grateful for your collaborative input through that process that Crabtree Rohrbach provided for us tonight. Look for more opportunities like that going forward where we can hear from you. Thank you again for your time this evening. Thank you for your dedication to Northern Lebanon. Thank you for your interest in this, and we look forward to hearing from you and working with you going forward. Have a great evening.